Human life is inherently short, like a river flowing through many lands before eventually emptying into the sea. In that journey, we sometimes experience joy, but mostly it's filled with worries and sorrows, things that go against our wishes and desires. How many times, amidst the chaos of work, family pressures, and unspoken sorrows, have we wished to let go of everything to find a little peace? Yet, peace is not about escaping the currents of life, but learning to keep our minds calm amidst the storms. Someone once confided that his life was like a small boat in a storm. The more he struggled, the easier it was for the boat to capsize. Only when he learned to be still, accepting that the storm was unavoidable, did he find inner serenity. Maintaining that calmness doesn't mean abandoning ourselves or giving up. It's a way to protect ourselves, to have enough clarity to move forward. The Buddha once taught that when our minds are at peace, all things are at peace. This means that although the external world may be turbulent, if our inner selves are not swept away, then even storms become a lesson, no longer a source of pain. Looking at life around us, some people immediately become agitated, resentful, and blameful when facing a small setback. But others, even when facing great loss, gently take a deep breath, smile, and move on. The difference lies not in the circumstances, but in the calmness of the soul. That is wisdom, the inner strength that each person can cultivate. For serenity doesn't come from eliminating adversity, but from the ability to accept and face it. Thus, calmness is a gift we can give ourselves. It's not something distant, but something that can begin with each conscious breath, each mindful step amidst a turbulent world. Believe that when we keep our minds at peace, even if adversity comes, we will be strong enough to live joyfully and freely. And in that moment, we will realize that peace has never truly left us. We just forgot to return to ourselves. There are evenings when, sitting silently and watching the late afternoon sun spread across old tiled roofs, we suddenly realize we've lived half our lives in haste, struggle, and nameless worries. Life is inherently short, yet often we live as if we have endless time, constantly striving to please everyone else. We forget that we too need to be heard, understood, and loved. Then, looking back, we're startled to see our shoulders heavy, our hearts marked with many scars, and our eyes no longer as bright as they once were. I once knew a woman named Huang. Her story will likely evoke deep empathy in many of us. Huang was born into a traditional family. From a young age, she was taught to sacrifice, to be obedient, and to think of others. As she grew up, went to school, and worked, she maintained that mindset. As a daughter, she was filial. As a wife, she was resourceful. As a mother, she sacrificed everything. Her life revolved around ensuring no one was upset because of her. In every decision, every choice, she put others first, always placing herself last. But then, when she turned 40, she realized her body could no longer bear the burdens she carried. She suffered from frequent insomnia, her mind racing with countless household chores and work tasks. There were evenings when she got home from work, utterly exhausted, with no energy left to smile at her husband and children. At night, lying on her familiar bed, she would toss and turn, wondering why, despite trying her best and living wholeheartedly for others, she still felt a strange, lonely void within. Once, in a state of utter exhaustion, she sat in a temple, listening to the resonant sound of the bell in the quiet afternoon. Then a kind monk approached and gently asked, "Are you very tired? Have you ever tried living for yourself?" That simple question brought tears to Huang's eyes. For all those years, she had never considered that she also had the right to live peacefully and freely. She always believed that happiness came only when she pleased everyone. But she didn't realize that this only gradually drained her. In the Dhammapada, the Buddha taught, "By oneself is evil done. By oneself is one defiled. By oneself is evil left undone. By oneself is one purified." Purity and impurity depend on oneself. No one can purify another. That teaching reminds us that happiness or suffering, peace or restlessness, all stem from how we treat ourselves and life. If we constantly live to please others, neglecting our inner voice, then ultimately, we will be the ones who suffer the most. Huang began to learn to live more slowly. She gradually learned to say no when work became overwhelming. She dedicated more time to herself, a relaxed morning, drinking tea, an afternoon stroll beneath the trees, or simply sitting quietly, breathing, and listening to her heartbeat. At first, she felt uneasy, thinking she was being selfish. But later, she understood more and more that only when she took care of her own soul could she truly offer genuine love to others. Someone once asked her, "Aren't you afraid of upsetting others?" She smiled gently. "In the past, I lived to please everyone. But then I stopped being myself. Now I live for my own peace of mind, and when my mind is at peace, I can also spread that peace to my loved ones." Her words reminded me of the Buddha's teaching. If one knows how to love oneself, only then can one love others. If we ourselves are not at peace, how can we bring peace to anyone else? It took Huang half a lifetime to realize the value of letting go. Letting go here doesn't mean shedding responsibilities or turning our backs on loved ones. It means releasing the burdens in our minds, letting go of excessive perfectionism, letting go of the desire to please everyone, letting go of the fear of judgment. That very act of letting go opened up a new horizon for her, where her heart could breathe and her soul found rest. Perhaps in each of us there is a shadow of Huang. We too have been caught in the whirlwind, trying to gain recognition, to please others, to avoid criticism. But the Buddha taught that life is impermanent. All opinions, praise, and criticism are merely fleeting winds and passing clouds. The more we try to cling to others' approval, the more we lose our own freedom. Because no one can live our lives for us, nor can anyone bear our suffering. When we know how to stop and listen to what we truly need, our minds will gradually find peace. That is not selfishness, but awakening. Like someone in a swift river. If they try to pull everyone along, they will become exhausted and drown. Only by knowing how to stay afloat and breathe ourselves can we have the strength to reach out and help those in need. Huang's story is a reminder that half a lifetime is not meant to be lived for external gazes, but to learn to turn inward and nurture our own souls. When we have enough inner calm, all adversities in life become mere ripples, unable to drown us. So if you feel exhausted from constantly chasing others' approval, try to stop for a moment. Place your hand on your chest. Take a deep breath. And ask yourself, what truly brings you peace? The answer might surprise you, but it will certainly open the door for you to learn how to let go. And when we know how to let go, we will find our hearts light as a freely drifting cloud, walking freely on the path of life. Remember that human life is essentially like a dream. We don't need to please everyone. We just need to live true to our authentic selves. When we live for ourselves, we not only find peace, but also sow joy for those around us, like a fragrant flower that, without ostentation, still makes the whole space more serene. So let your mind learn to be Oham. Learn to let go of unnecessary expectations, so that one day, looking back, you can smile peacefully and say, I have lived true to myself. And that is the most valuable thing. One late summer afternoon, as the sun was slowly setting on the horizon, I saw a friend sitting quietly on the porch, eyes gazing toward the red dirt road where the trees on either side were changing leaves. My friend told me that life is like a series of turns. No one can ever retrace the exact same path again. Every step, every choice, every decision we make leads to a new direction. And once we've chosen a path, we must accept what unfolds on that path. We cannot turn back to start over. Listening to my friend, I suddenly felt a stirring in my heart. Because, truly, how often in life do we get to retrace old steps? Some people forever harbor regret over past decisions. They think that if they had chosen differently then, perhaps life today would be much better. But in the permanence of life, who knows what the right choice truly is? Sometimes, what we consider right leads us to suffering. And what we believe is wrong becomes a turning point toward peace and happiness. We often forget that every path taken, whether full of thorns or blooming flowers, holds a valuable lesson. And it is precisely these lessons that are the true provisions for the journey ahead. Once, I met an elderly man at a temple. He sat beneath a Bodhi tree, his fingers tracing prayer beads, a gentle smile on his face, as if embracing the whole world in his heart. I asked him, "Have you ever regretted anything in your life?" He slowly replied, "My child, of course. Who in life has no regrets?" But then his master taught him that regret accomplishes nothing, just as a fallen flower cannot return to its branch. The only thing one can do is observe it, accept it with compassion, and then let it go. From then on, he learned to accept what had passed, letting go so his heart could be at peace. His words reminded me of the Buddha's teaching on impermanence. The Exalted One once said, "All conditioned phenomena are impermanent, born to cease. Strive diligently for liberation." Indeed, impermanence is the very nature of all things. What we hold tightly in our hands today might fall away tomorrow, without warning. The person we love today might become a stranger tomorrow. The happiness we think is eternal will also one day vanish like passing clouds. If we stubbornly cling and resist change, we will be the first to suffer. I remember a woman who once confided that she couldn't let go of her broken marriage. Even though she knew her husband no longer loved her, she painfully clung to him. Many nights she stayed awake, crying until her tears ran dry. Then, one day, she went to a temple and heard a monk teach about impermanence and karmic connections. She finally understood that when a karmic connection ends, It cannot be held onto with tears or suffering. What needed to be done was not to resent or cling, but to learn to accept and let go. From that day on, she gradually found more peace, and a smile returned to her face. Acceptance doesn't mean giving up everything, but opening our hearts to understand that everything in life has its reason. Letting go also doesn't mean abandoning ourselves to fate, but setting down the burdens in our minds to continue our journey more lightly. Like someone carrying a heavy load on their shoulders. If they don't put it down, the path ahead will become increasingly tiring. But once they let go, their feet will walk freely, and the sky before them will open up wider. The Buddha once taught that in life, what has passed, let it pass. What has not yet come, let it be, according to karmic conditions. Only the present is truly where we live. Yet, we often get stuck in the past or worry about the future. This very entanglement makes our minds restless and our hearts heavy. Only when we learn to accept and let go can we truly live in the present, enjoying every ray of sunshine, every breeze, every smile as precious gifts of life. Once, I strolled in the temple garden early one morning. The morning sun shone through the leaves, casting golden patches onto the ground. I saw a leaf falling, twirling in the air, and then resting on the path. The leaf did not resist the wind, nor did it regret the branch it had left. It gently surrendered to the natural flow. I suddenly understood that letting go is exactly that, knowing how to embrace impermanence with a light heart. If the leaf resisted the wind, it would only be torn apart. But by knowing how to follow its karmic condition, it transformed into peace in its own fall. In life, we often face unexpected events, losses, and sudden turns. Some lose their jobs, some lose loved ones, some lose faith in love. Facing such losses, many collapse and blame fate. But if we look deeper, we will see that these very events are opportunities for us to grow. Sometimes, thanks to a door closing, we find another, wider door opening. Sometimes, by losing something, we learn to appreciate what remains. There's a story about a young man who, due to business losses, accumulated mounting debts. He became desperate and considered suicide. But in that moment, he remembered his mother's words. When you fall to the bottom, you only have one way to go: up. He abandoned his foolish thought, started over, and diligently pursued honest work. Many years later, he was more successful and happier than he had ever been. When asked for his secret, he just smiled. That day, I learned the lesson of letting go. I let go of the thought that everything had to go my way, to embrace a new opportunity. Letting go is, in fact, an art of living. It requires courage, because people are often accustomed to holding on. We are used to clinging to the past, holding tightly to memories, even those that no longer serve us. But like a hand clutching a handful of sand, the tighter you squeeze, the more sand slips away. Only when you open your palm will the sand rest quietly, and you, too, will feel lighter. In the Dhammapada, the Buddha taught, "Whoever knows how to let go finds peace and joy. Whoever does not let go finds suffering." That teaching is like a lamp illuminating the darkness. If we cling to hatred, we will only grow more weary. If we hold on to resentment, we will never find peace. Only by letting go do we truly become free. My dear friend, try to look back at your life for a moment. There are things you couldn't change, so what is there to regret? There are people who have passed through your life, so smile and thank them for giving you a piece of memory. There are dreams that didn't come true, so consider them opportunities to find a more suitable dream. Accepting what has passed and letting go of what no longer serves you. That is wisdom, the strength of the soul. Imagine your mind as a lake. If you keep throwing too many stones into it, the surface will always be rippled, never still. But if you stop and let the water settle, you will see the reflection of the full moon. Our minds are the same. When we know how to accept and let go, stillness will gradually appear. And in that stillness, peace and freedom will blossom. I only wish you could gently set down the unnecessary burdens on your shoulders. Don't let the past hold you back. Don't let resentment bind you. Practice relaxing your soul. Learn to smile at changes. Because, as the Buddha taught, impermanence is inevitable. Only letting go brings freedom. And when the mind is free, we will find our hearts open, joyful, and at peace, living in the world without being swept away by its storms. One crisp morning, I sat on the porch, watching the blue smoke curling up from small kitchen roofs in the countryside, the crowing of roosters, the chirping of children calling each other to school, and the slightly smoky scent from the kitchen seemed to awaken a sense of peace within me. I suddenly thought that perhaps happiness doesn't inherently require much. Just a home, a simple meal, and a contented heart are more than enough to live serenely. But amidst modern life, when people's hearts are swept into the whirlwind of fame, money, and calculation, we often forget that simplicity. People think that the more meticulously they plan and the more they accumulate, the more secure they will be. But strangely, the more one accumulates, the heavier the mind becomes. The more one calculates, the more chaotic the heart feels. I remember once sitting and talking with a farmer in the countryside. He had only a small garden where he grew vegetables and raised chickens daily. His life wasn't particularly abundant. I asked him if he felt unhappy seeing others wealthier than himself, and he smiled kindly, saying, "Unhappy? Not at all. I grow a few vegetables, sell them at the market in the morning for enough money to buy rice. And in the evening, I eat with my children and grandchildren. That's happiness. I'm happy for wealthy people, and for myself, I have enough to eat and wear, and owe no one." His heart felt light as air. I was struck by his simple answer. Indeed, sometimes what we call happiness doesn't lie in grand things, but in a simple, uncompetitive way of life. In the Dhammapada, the Buddha taught that contentment is the greatest wealth. The contented person finds joy even sleeping on the ground, while the discontented person is unsatisfied even in heaven. That teaching is like a wake-up call. We constantly chase endless desires, thinking that a little more will bring peace. But then we find our hearts emptier, like a full vase into which we keep trying to pour more water, only causing it to overflow and be wasted. The person who knows when to stop, who knows how to let go of a little, is truly the one who achieves inner serenity. I have a friend who, in his youth, always harbored a burning desire to get rich, working so much that he had almost no time to rest. He threw himself into work from early morning until late at night, accumulating wealth, buying fancy cars, and acquiring luxurious homes. Outsiders looked on and thought he was happy. But once during a meal, he sighed and said, "I have money now, but my heart still feels empty. And even food doesn't taste good, and I can't even sleep peacefully." After many years, when his health deteriorated from the pressure, he realized that the things he pursued only made him more exhausted. He decided to sell some of his assets, return to his hometown, and live a slower life, watching the sunrise in the morning, walking around the village in the afternoon. From that day on, he said he truly knew what peace was. Life is inherently short. If we let our hearts be burdened by calculations of gain and loss, we will lose our own joy. Sometimes, a simple meal of vegetables and pickles with family is sweeter than a lavish feast. Just a well-fitting, comfortable shirt is enough to feel warm, instead of a whole wardrobe and still feeling empty. Just a few sincere friends are more valuable than 1,000 superficial relationships. Yet, people often overlook these simple things, chasing after fleeting desires and never feeling satisfied. In the scriptures, the Buddha once advised that it's better to be clumsy and at peace than clever and troubled. The saying seems simple at first glance, but it's a profound reminder. Many live cleverly, shrewdly, calculating everything to gain an advantage over others, only to end up utterly exhausted. Meanwhile, some live simply, sometimes clumsily, caring little for competition. Yet their hearts are always at peace, because they know that intelligence, if used only for comparison, becomes a burden, while true, honest clumsiness helps the mind feel light. Once, I visited an elderly monk at a small temple in the mountains. The temple wasn't large, its tiled roof was old, and the whitewashed walls were peeling. Yet the place exuded an extraordinary, peaceful energy. I asked the master why he still felt happy despite the temple being so poor. He smiled, pointed to the simple wooden bowl in front of him, and said, "Every day, I have food to eat, clothes to wear, a place to meditate, and someone to share the Buddha's teachings with. That is enough." Living simply is not about lacking, but about not having too much. The more you accumulate, the more troubled you become. Let go a little, and your heart will become wider and lighter. The master's words were like a cool breeze, dispelling many of my worries. Perhaps we are too accustomed to letting our minds be flooded with thoughts of what to do tomorrow, how much money we'll have, what the future holds. But the more we think, the more restless we become. Like a glass of clear water, if you stir it continuously, it will remain cloudy. Only when you let it settle will it gradually become clear. The human mind is the same. When we stop overthinking, clarity will naturally emerge. Living simply is not about abandoning everything, but keeping what's essential and letting go of what isn't. Once, I met an old woman, over 70, living in a small house by the river. The house held nothing valuable, just a few old clothes, a single bed, and a Buddhist altar. Yet, her face was always radiant. I asked her the secret to maintaining that smile. She laughed and said, "There's no secret, my child. In the morning, I wake up, chant Buddha's name, light incense, cook a pot of rice, and eat it with some vegetables. At noon, I sit on the porch and watch the river flow. In the afternoon, I watch the sunset. That's all a person needs. If there's more, I'm happy. If not, it's also fine. After listening, I suddenly felt incredibly lighthearted. The Buddha once compared humans to travelers crossing a river. If they carry too much luggage, it will be difficult to reach the other shore. To reach the shore of enlightenment, one must let go of unnecessary attachments, ambitions, and calculations. The person who knows how to live simply is preparing light provisions for the journey to liberation. Do you realize that sometimes we cause ourselves suffering over very small things? An unintentional remark from someone, we take it to heart, dwelling on it until we lose sleep. A small mistake in the past, we endlessly blame ourselves for it. But in reality, it's all because we take on too much and refuse to let go. If we learn to simplify, we will realize that those words were just a passing breeze. That mistake is in the past, and the present is what truly matters. Living simply is appreciating every moment, sitting and drinking a cup of tea, feeling its warmth spread, listening to birds sing, and feeling joy in your heart, watching a flower bloom and then wither without attachment, walking freely on a familiar path and feeling at peace. When our minds are simple, the world around us also becomes simpler and more beautiful. My dear friend, perhaps it's time to ask ourselves, how much do we truly need to live happily? Do we need a lot of money? Do we need a lot of praise? Or just a contented heart, a pure soul? When you can answer that question, you will see that living simply is the shortest path to peace and happiness. I hope you can gently let go of unnecessary calculations and fewer chaotic thoughts. Live simply, yet fully in your soul, because happiness lies not in having much, but in having enough. And as the Buddha taught, the contented person is truly wealthy. When you know how to live simply, your heart will naturally find serenity. And in that serenity, joy and freedom will blossom, allowing you to live in the world without being swept away by its storms. My dear friend, sometimes in life we think that happiness lies in holding on tightly, clinging for a long time to what we love and cherish. But then there are days when letting go, we suddenly realize that some things were never truly ours to begin with. It's like waking early one morning, tenderly admiring a glistening dewdrop on a blade of grass. Yet, when the sun rises, the dew gently evaporates. No matter how much we wish to keep it, we cannot. Life is the same. Everything comes by karmic condition. When the karmic connection ends, it departs. The more we force it, the more we suffer. I once heard a small story from an elderly monk at an ancient temple. He told of a young woman who loved her husband with all her heart, but her husband did not truly dedicate his full affection to the family. The wife tried her best to care for him, endured, and even sought every way to keep her husband by her side. But the more she tried, the further her husband drifted away, eventually leaving her for someone else. She suffered and resented life, blaming fate for its unfairness. When she came to the temple, she tearfully asked, "Why did I try with all my heart, yet couldn't keep the one I loved?" The elderly monk smiled gently and said, "My child, karmic connections are like seeds sown in the ground. Some take root and flourish, while others cannot sprout. Love is the same. Some connections are only meant for a meeting and then a parting. The more you force it, the more you suffer. Only by following karmic conditions will you find peace. Those words stunned her, then slowly sank in, so that after many years she learned to accept and move forward peacefully. Buddhist scriptures teach that all phenomena in life arise from karmic conditions. What comes is the convergence of conditions. What leaves is the dissolution of conditions. Because people do not understand this principle of impermanence, they cling, hold tightly, and try to grasp, inadvertently binding themselves to a cycle of suffering. Many people think that once they have love, money, fame, or status, they will remain forever. But if we look back, what truly endures? Tall houses with grand entrances can change owners one day. Passionate love can also fade. A youthful, healthy body will also grow old and weak. All are merely floating clouds, coming together and dispersing according to karmic conditions. If we live by karmic conditions, we will be as light-hearted as flowing water, unburdened by any turn. Another time, I witnessed an elderly man in a poor rural area. He had a small rice field, planting year-round, sometimes with good harvests, sometimes with bad. But each time the harvest failed, he neither complained nor resented heaven and earth. He just quietly smiled and said, "If the weather isn't favorable this year, we'll eat sweet potatoes and vegetables. What comes, I accept. What goes, I let go. No need to force anything and exhaust myself." The villagers were surprised and asked him how he could be so calm. He simply replied, "Live according to karmic conditions. A peaceful mind is a great blessing." Looking at him, I understood that true wealth is not about how much money one has, but about having a tranquil soul, unmoved by change. The Buddha taught that everything comes and goes due to karmic conditions. That saying seems simple, but contains a treasure trove of wisdom. When we understand that all things are due to karmic conditions, we will no longer resent. When we experience loss, we won't be overly self-important. People who live by karmic conditions know how to live in harmony with life, without forcing, without competing, and without complaining. They are like a flower petal falling in the wind, not clinging to the branch, not resenting the wind, but gently settling down, blending into the earth. In life, perhaps everyone has experienced the feeling of loss. It might be the loss of a loved one, a relationship, a job opportunity, or an unfinished dream. Initially, we often suffer, torment ourselves, and wonder why it happened. But if we look deeper, we will see that it's all just the end of a karmic connection. People leave because they no longer belong to us. Opportunities are lost because they are not the right path. Dreams shatter to make way for another path. When we learn to view everything according to karmic conditions, our hearts will be calmer. A Zen master once said, "What is truly yours, no matter where it goes, will return. What is not truly yours, no matter how tightly you hold it, will be lost." Reflecting on this, it feels profoundly true. We keep thinking that holding on is a way to protect, but in reality, letting go is wisdom. Only when we can let go do we truly become free, truly live fully in the present. Try to recall a memory in your life when you tried to hold on to someone, a relationship, or a job. Even though you tried everything, the outcome was not as desired. At that time, You felt frustrated and resentful. But after some time, looking back, you realized that if everything had stayed, you wouldn't have achieved the growth or new opportunities you have today. Thus, what was lost was not misfortune, but a transformation. That is the meaning of tui duin, according to karmic conditions. When we understand this principle, we will learn to live more serenely. Instead of forcing things, we let everything follow favorable karmic conditions. What comes, we receive with gratitude. What leaves, we see off with a smile. We don't need to cling to what isn't ours, nor resent what has departed. Every passing moment, simply keeping our minds at peace, is enough. Finally, remember that tui duin doesn't mean giving up or abandoning oneself to fate, but living wholeheartedly in the present, doing our best, and then calmly accepting the outcome. That is the wisdom of someone who knows how to live serenely. Everything comes and goes like a passing breeze, like a cloud drifting across the sky. We only need to open our hearts, live sincerely, sow good seeds. The rest we leave to karmic conditions, and naturally, our hearts will feel light and free. And from that place, we learn that happiness is not in holding on to much, but in knowing how to smile when things are lost. Because everything in life is due to karmic conditions, and when we follow those conditions, we will see a profound peace gradually blossoming within our own hearts. In life, there are times when we sit alone and wonder why some people are born lucky, always finding benefactors to help them wherever they go. Their lives sail smoothly, while others, no matter how diligently they strive, encounter one hardship after another. Is fate inherently unfair, or do all things have deeper causes that the ordinary eye cannot see? The Buddha once taught a profound statement. To know your past causes, look at your present effects. To know your future effects, look at your present causes. That saying is like a key unlocking the secret door to karma and blessings in human life. I remember one afternoon as a child, sitting with my grandmother on the porch, watching the rain fall. She told me stories about karma. She said that life is like a garden. Every word, every action, every thought of ours is a seed. That seed, once sown in the earth, will sooner or later sprout, blossom, and bear fruit. Good seeds yield sweet fruit. Bad seeds yield bitter fruit. Therefore, human life does not coincidentally encounter joys or sorrows. All are the results of karmic conditions and the seeds we have sown before, sometimes from this lifetime, sometimes from distant past lives. To help you understand better, I want to tell you the story of a girl named Zen Tam, whom I once knew. Even from a young age, everyone noticed a special kindness and benevolence in her. She lived in a poor rural village. Her family was not well off, but in the eyes of the villagers, she was a precious person. Zen Tam was always ready to help everyone around her. If a neighbor fell ill, she would immediately go and care for them. If children lacked food, she would share her own meal with them. Although she herself didn't have much extra, her heart was always full. People often said she was blessed, because even though she wasn't wealthy, good things always happened to her. One time, on her way to the market, she happened to encounter an elderly person who had fallen in the middle of the road. Many people passed by, but didn't stop, as everyone was busy with their own affairs. Only Zen Tam ran over, helped the elder up, and bought ointment for them. the elder looked at her with tearful eyes and said, "You are a blessing in my life. I will never forget your kindness." Not long after, when she applied for a job at a company in the city, the interviewer turned out to be the elder's son. Recognizing his father's benefactor from years ago, he hired her without hesitation and helped her greatly with her work. Thien Tam's life continued in this way. The small acts she performed out of compassion became good seeds that sprouted into blessings. She never calculated, never expected anything in return, but it seemed life always quietly repaid her with what she deserved. People looked on and said she was lucky. But if viewed through the lens of karma, we would see those were the good fruits from the good seeds she had sown earlier. Not just in this life, but perhaps from previous lives she had lived virtuously, which is why she reaped such blessings in this life. In the Anguttara Nikaya, the Buddha taught that just as seeds sown in the earth yield fruit according to their kind, those who do good will certainly receive peaceful and joyful results. Those who do evil will certainly receive sorrowful results. Karmic retribution operates naturally, showing no favoritism to anyone, distinguishing neither noble nor humble. Just as a shadow follows the form, as an echo follows the sound, so does the fruit follow its cause. It may not come immediately, but it is certainly never lost. Karma is like the fairest ledger, recording every action we take. When conditions ripen, the fruit will manifest, sooner or later. Reflecting on Thien Tam's life, we clearly see that blessings are not random occurrences. They are the result of a process of sowing good seeds. People often wonder why, for the same job, some get promoted easily, while others struggle indefinitely. Some find luck as soon as they step out the door, while others encounter one misfortune after another. If viewed through the lens of karma, we will see that these are the results of seeds sown earlier. Karmic connections. Never miss anyone. I remember Thien Tam once recounted that even in the most difficult times, she maintained the belief that as long as she lived virtuously, no matter how many thorns she encountered, she would eventually find peace. And indeed, she never fell into desperate impasses, as if an invisible hand lifted her, guiding her through the storms. Many people asked her for her secret. She just smiled and said, "I have no secret. I just live sincerely, harm no one, and leave the rest to karmic conditions." Her story makes us realize a simple yet profound truth. Blessings do not come from prayers, but from our own virtuous actions, words, and thoughts. Those who wish to reap sweet fruits in the future must sow good seeds now. To have a peaceful and joyful next life, one must cultivate a good heart, nurture faith, do good deeds, and avoid evil in the present. Therefore, when you see others succeed or be fortunate, don't rush to compare or envy. Understand that they are reaping the fruits of the good seeds they have sown. As for us, if we want a brighter tomorrow, let's start today by sowing seeds of kindness in every word and every action. A smile, a word of encouragement, a small act of help, seemingly insignificant, yet they are precious seeds of blessings sown into the soil of karmic connections. When we deeply understand the law of karma, our hearts will be calmer in the face of perceived injustices in life. Seeing someone do evil, yet remain wealthy, we don't rush to resent them. because they might be enjoying good results from a past life, but the negative consequences of their current actions will eventually come. If we ourselves face many difficulties, don't be pessimistic, because if we continue to live virtuously, those seeds will bear fruits of peace and joy in the future. Karma is never wrong. It's just not yet time, my dear friend. Thien Tam's story is like a gentle reminder that life is not random. Happiness, peace, good fortune, or suffering, all are sown by ourselves. Understanding this, we will no longer blame fate, no longer resent life. Instead, we will appreciate every opportunity to sow more good seeds, so that one day we may reap sweet fruits within our own souls. And most importantly, when we deeply believe in karma, we will live more slowly, more present, knowing how to let go of anger and envy, because we understand that every thought, every action, every word leaves its mark in this universe. When we sow good seeds, we not only make others happy, but also sow happiness for ourselves. I hope you will remember the Buddha's teaching. Karma is like a shadow following the form, like an echo following the sound, never different. Sow good seeds from today for tomorrow, and for all future lives, so that we may live in the light of peace and freedom. Then you will see that karma and blessings are not distant mysteries, but the magic present in every ordinary moment of our lives. Perhaps one pristine morning, as we step out of our homes, looking at the gentle sunlight falling on the familiar road, our hearts suddenly wonder, what does a blessed life look like? Many people think blessings are wealth, status, or power. But when we sit in stillness, we will see that true blessings are often much simpler. Peaceful health, a harmonious family, a calm mind, and a firm belief in karma. The Buddha once taught, to know your past causes, look at your present effects. To know your future effects, look at your present causes. That saying opens up a way for us to reflect and understand that all good fortune, peace, joy, or suffering in life today are blessings or karmic results from what we have sown. Once, I met an elderly woman at a temple. Her face was etched with wrinkles, but her eyes were remarkably bright and clear. She said that she was never wealthy in her life, but her children and grandchildren were filial, and her neighbors respected and loved her. Wherever she went, people were ready to help her. She smiled gently and said, "That's a blessing, my child. It's not about money, but about a peaceful heart and a good heart, so that life repays you with peace." Her story made me suddenly think that perhaps we often seek blessings in places too distant, forgetting that they are already present in every peaceful breath of life. One of the clearest signs of a blessed person is their faith in karma. Such a person does not resent heaven or blame others, does not fault fate, but always understands that today is the result of yesterday, and tomorrow is built with the seeds of today. A person with faith in karma does not panic when facing adversity, knowing that it is the fruit of past actions. They are also not arrogant when encountering favorable circumstances, understanding that all things are impermanent, and blessings also need to be continuously cultivated. Then there are others who carry a kind heart, always thinking of doing good for others wherever they go. That kind heart is like a small lamp, humble yet capable of illuminating the path for many. Such people are usually less entangled in resentment because their hearts are filled with compassion. Their blessings appear not only in the loving gaze of others, but also manifest in the peace they feel as they lie down each night. For as the Buddha taught, when the mind is pure, the world is pure. Blessed people also often encounter benefactors in life, not because they are randomly lucky, but because from within their hearts they have sown seeds of sincerity and kindness, causing favorable karmic connections to naturally seek them out. Let's consider, does anyone want to help a selfish and cruel person, or do our hearts more easily open to someone humble and kind? Benefactors are indeed good fruits, a reflection of the good seeds we have sown. Another sign of blessings is having obedient and virtuous children. Children are a great karmic connection in everyone's life. When parents live with a good heart, routinely doing good deeds, observing precepts, and performing meritorious acts, those blessings extend not only to themselves, but also to their children and grandchildren. An obedient child is a great blessing for the family. Conversely, when parents sow unvirtuous seeds, it can easily lead to karmic retribution, making it difficult to raise their children to be good people. But blessings are not just external. There is a deeper form of blessing, which is inner peace. Even amidst external storms and turmoil, such a person maintains a serene smile. They do not chase the clamor of fame and gain, do not become frantic in loss, nor arrogant in success. They understand impermanence, and because of this, their minds are at peace and their hearts are clear. This is the most precious blessing. Because money can be lost, loved ones can depart, but if inner peace is attained, nothing can take it away. At this point, you might ask yourself, how do I know if I have these signs of blessings? We don't need to compare or judge, we just need to listen to our hearts. When we believe in karma, keep a kind heart, live sincerely, know how to love, easily forgive, face difficulties without resentment, and live simply with joy. That is, when blessings are present. A young man once recounted that he often helped others without much calculation. One day, he had a minor accident on the road, but fortunately, a stranger stopped to help take him to the hospital in time. He said, "At that moment, I understood that helping others is also helping oneself. It turns out blessings are not far away. They return precisely when you need them most." That story reminds us of the Buddha's words. Whatever seed you sow, that fruit you shall reap. Sow good seeds, and good fruits will follow, like a shadow that never leaves its form. If we were to list every sign of a blessed person, it might be long and numerous, but the essence lies not in quantity, but in the state of mind. These include a deep belief in karma, maintaining a kind heart, enjoying stable health, having a harmonious family, being loved and respected by many, having a mind with few worries, encountering many favorable conditions, possessing clear wisdom, having the ability to let go, living simply yet happily, speaking sincerely, easily forgiving, knowing how to be grateful, practicing good deeds, and maintaining peace even in adversity. These signs are not for us to become complacent or arrogant, but for us to reflect on ourselves. If we find ourselves lacking, do not be sad. For blessings are not predetermined, but something we can cultivate daily. just by initiating a good thought, performing a kind act, or maintaining a grateful heart, we immediately begin to nurture blessings for ourselves and for future lives. The important thing is to know how to return to the present, living in mindfulness, so that every step, every word, every action sows good seeds. Then time will show us that happiness and peace are not in distant places, but right within this peaceful heart. And from that, we understand that blessings are not a random reward, but the fair and wondrous flow of karma. When we live virtuously, let go of greed and anger, and keep our minds serene, each passing day is already a sign of blessings. So that one day, looking back, we see that our lives, though not perfect, have been peaceful and free, living serenely as the Buddha taught. One afternoon, as the sunlight turned golden on the old tiled roof, we suddenly heard the resonant sound of a temple bell somewhere in the wind. That sound was not loud or urgent, but slowly resonated, calming one's heart. In that very moment, we suddenly realized the power of silence. Amidst the hustle and bustle of everyday life, sometimes no more words are needed. Simply being silent allows our minds to find peace again. The Buddha once taught that conquering 1,000 armies is not as great as conquering oneself. And sometimes silence is the path for us to conquer a restless mind, overcome anger, and restrain words we wish to utter in moments of agitation. Nowadays, people often mistakenly believe that silence is weakness, resignation, or an unwillingness to confront. But in reality, silence is a form of wisdom, a type of compassion. It is wisdom, because when we are silent, we avoid ignorant words that can cause harm to others and ourselves. It is a compassion, because silence helps us not to amplify suffering, nor to sow more seeds of hatred into the world. One who knows when to be silent has learned to light the lamp of wisdom within their heart. I remember a story about a young man named Min. Min was naturally hot-tempered. In his speech, he often couldn't keep his composure. Every time someone insulted or misunderstood him, he would immediately retort with harsh words. But after each argument, he felt empty and tormented, regretting that he had made things even more complicated. One time, during a visit to a temple, Min heard the abbot recount a story about a person who was cursed and insulted by someone in the marketplace. That person did not retort. They merely remained silent and smiled. When asked why he wasn't angry, he replied, "If someone offers you a gift and you don't accept it, then the gift still belongs to them. Insults are the same. If I don't accept them, they cannot hurt me." That saying was like a ray of light shining directly into Min's heart. From that day on, Min began to practice silence. Not silence to swallow anger, but silence to listen. He listened to his breath, listened to his inner voice, and listened to the sufferings of the person in front of him. When someone complained, he didn't rush to react. He just kept his mind calm. At first, many thought he was weak, but gradually, people realized there was a strange power in that silence. He was no longer easily swept away by gossip, no longer lost sleep over unintentional remarks. Instead, he maintained his peace, and those around him also felt more comfortable when near him. Min's story reminds us of the Buddha's words in the Dhammapada. He harms one who harms, He resents one who resents. But how can hostility touch one who harms not and resents not? Indeed, silence is not only a way to protect ourselves, but also a gift we give to others. When we are silent, we give them an opportunity to reflect on themselves, so that the fire of anger within them can burn itself out. Along with silence, patience, or forbearance, is also a great strength. People often think that patience is resignation, a sign of weakness. But in reality, patience is not blindly accepting injustice, but an awakened awareness that knows how to step back to keep one's mind from being swept away. One who knows patience understands that all things are impermanent. Anger will pass, words will dissipate, only the consequences remain. Patience is sowing seeds of merit for the future. I once met a woman who shared that her husband was hot-tempered, often speaking harsh words. In the past, she often argued back, making the family atmosphere constantly tense. But later, she learned patience, not to suffer through it, but to maintain peace for her children and herself. When her husband got angry, she would quietly pour a glass of water, place it on the table, and then step outside. At first, he became even angrier, thinking she was disrespecting him. But gradually, he realized his wife's silence and patience were a reflection. One day, he sat down by himself and apologized. She smiled and said, "If I had kept arguing that day, I probably would never have found this peace in my life." The Buddha once taught that forbearance is the practice of bodhisattvas. Patience is not for one's own disadvantage, but to keep the mind from being swept away by storms. When we are patient, we maintain clarity to see that everything will pass. Anger, if not nourished, will dissipate like smoke. And it is in this patience that we are sowing seeds of compassion for tomorrow. Consider how many times in life we have uttered words that hurt others, simply because we didn't pause for a moment of silence, weren't patient enough for a second. If at that moment we had stopped, listened to our breath, and maintained composure, perhaps we wouldn't have created so many wounds. The power of silence and patience not only saves others, but also saves ourselves from future suffering. Therefore, silence is not cowardice, but wisdom. Patience is not resignation, but a blessing. One who knows silence and patience is cultivating strength for their mind and peace for their life, so that in the most difficult moments, they can stand firm, not swept away by the storm. If one day you feel weary amidst gossip, or wish to react immediately when someone hurts you, remember Min's story, remember the Buddha's teaching on forbearance, and try choosing silence just once. Silence to listen, silence to let go, silence to sow a seed of peace for yourself and for those around you. Then you will find your heart lighter, life gentler, and joy and freedom will blossom right within your own heart. One early morning, sitting on the porch, listening to birds sing, we realize there are things in life that need no words to describe. Amidst the tranquil space, we suddenly see clearly that silence is sometimes more profound than 1,000 words. People often want to explain, to prove, to win arguments with words. But after each debate, few truly find peace. Perhaps because peace lies not in words, but in the ability to keep a calm heart amidst all encounters. The Buddha once taught that the wise live in silence, like a lake that is still, clear, and profound. Silence, therefore, is not just restraint, but a way for us to nurture a clear mind, a peaceful heart, and a free life. There are 4 situations in life when silence becomes a greater power than any words. These are when we are insulted, when we are belittled, when we are envied, and even when we are praised. When I was young, I once witnessed a friend being directly insulted by a colleague in front of a crowd. Everyone thought he would get angry and retaliate to defend his honor. But he merely smiled and remained silent. Afterward, when people asked why he said nothing, he replied that insults only hurt us if we allow them to stay in our hearts. But if we let them pass like the wind, there is nothing left to suffer from. At that time, I didn't fully understand. But after many years of ups and downs, I came to see that silence as truly venerable. The Buddha once reminded us that hatred cannot be extinguished by hatred. Only compassion can extinguish hatred. In the face of an insult, if we choose to retaliate, we only add fuel to the fire. But if we choose silence, we are cooling our minds with the water of compassion. There are also times when we are belittled. Some people dismiss our abilities, disregard our efforts. At such times, our ego easily arises, wanting to prove that we are not inferior. But the more we struggle to prove ourselves, the more exhausted we become. I remember an older friend who shared that at work. He was often belittled by his superiors and not recognized. In the past, he tried to argue, dispute, and prove his point with words. But it led nowhere. Later, he chose silence, focusing only on doing his work well. As time passed, the results themselves became the clearest proof. Looking back, he smiled and said, "If I had kept resisting back then, perhaps I wouldn't have the opportunity to advance now." Silence, in the face of contempt, is not a sign of weakness, but a way to conserve energy and cultivate what is valuable. Then there are times when we are envied. People often cannot avoid comparative glances and jealousy when they see someone superior to themselves. Many, out of envy, try to undermine others, sowing malicious seeds. If we hastily retaliate, it's like wrapping ourselves in a whirlwind of gossip. I once heard a story about a teacher. When his student succeeded, some outsiders criticized, claiming the teacher was merely lucky to have a talented student. The teacher heard, but said nothing. Later, that student returned to express gratitude. Everyone understood the immense contribution of the teacher. The teacher gently said that praise or criticism is just a passing breeze. What matters is whether one's heart is truly pure. That is very true. Others' envy only makes us weary if we cling to it. But if we remain silent, we maintain the freedom of our minds, not bound by the gaze of the world. And finally, silence is also needed, even when we are praised. People generally like compliments, like to be praised to feel valuable. But clinging too much to praise is also a form of bondage. The Buddha once taught that all things are impermanent. Both praise and criticism come and go like passing clouds. I once saw a woman who, upon achieving success in her work, received much praise. She was joyful and proud. But then when people started to criticize, she became frustrated and sad. Later, she practiced silence in the face of both praise and criticism. She said that if she allowed praise to lift her up, then when criticism came, it would easily bring her down. Only by being silent could she maintain balance. Through these 4 situations, we realize that silence is not avoidance, but an awakened choice. Silence to forgive, silence to grow, silence to keep our minds clear and our hearts peaceful. Each time we choose silence at the right moment, we take another step closer to freedom. Silence is the key that opens the door to wisdom, helping us clearly see impermanence, let go of unnecessary attachments, and thereby find serenity. Someone asked how one can avoid being hurt when insulted, belittled, envied, or even praised. The answer likely lies in knowing how to return to ourselves, observing our breath, and realizing that all are just small ripples on the surface of a lake. The calmer the lake, the harder it is for ripples to disturb it. Our minds are the same. The more serene they are, the less power external circumstances have to affect them. So, practice silence when needed. Not silence to swallow anger, but silence to keep the mind from being swept away. Not silence due to weakness, but silence to forgive, to grow, to live a free and serene life. Then you will find life gentler, people's hearts warmer, and you yourself will become more steadfast amidst all changes. And ultimately, looking back, you will smile and realize that happiness does not come from the words we speak, but from the stillness within our hearts. It is that very silence that truly brings us back to peace and freedom. One afternoon, I sat on the porch, watching the last rays of sunlight gently fall upon the canopy of leaves. Gusts of wind passed through, making the leaves rustle, then settling down again. Witnessing that scene, I suddenly thought of each of our lives. So many joys, sorrows, successes, or failures. Aren't they also like those leaves, fluttering for a moment, then becoming still, and finally falling in life's endless cycle? People often say life is a sea of suffering. But if we only see suffering and forget that within it are karmic conditions for us to find happiness, then we will forever be lost in darkness. Only when we see through the nature of suffering do we learn to cherish every small moment of peace and understand that happiness inherently exists in every breath. I remember a friend once confided that she had gone through a period of impasse. Her family was fractured, work was unfavorable, and her health was declining. She felt as if the whole world had turned its back on her. During those days, she often cried alone, wondering why life was so unfair. Then, one day, she went to a small temple and coincidentally heard the abbot teach, "Suffering is a teacher. Suffering helps us awaken. Without suffering, how could we understand peace and joy?" That saying was like a ray of light piercing through the mist, startling her. She realized that pain was not meant to drown her, but to teach her to cherish simple things more deeply. Like having a warm meal with loved ones, having a healthy day to work, still having eyes to gaze at the blue sky. From then on, she gradually let go of resentment, learning to view every event as an essential part of human existence. In Buddhist scriptures, the Venerable One once taught that suffering is the first noble truth. This is not for us to be pessimistic, but for us to awaken to the fact that life is inherently impermanent. This body, this youth, this fame, they will all change with time. Nothing is permanent, Even happiness is only temporary. But precisely because happiness is fragile, we need to cherish it even more. When we understand impermanence, we no longer stubbornly cling, no longer resent losses. Instead, we learn to live with tolerance and forgiveness, so our hearts become light as clouds in the sky. I heard a story from a teacher. Long ago, there was a man who was very angry with his friend for betraying him. He carried that hatred in his heart for decades, to the point where his hair turned gray, but his heart remained heavy. One day, he came to the temple and asked, "Master, what must I do to be rid of this hatred?" The master gave him a bag of sand, telling him that each time he remembered his hatred, he should add a handful of sand to the bag. A month later, the bag of sand was so heavy that he could no longer carry it. The master gently said, "See, my child, hatred is like that sand. The longer you hold on to it, the more exhausted you become. To feel light, you must let it go." Hearing this, he broke down, crying. He realized that the one causing him suffering was not the enemy outside, but himself for holding on to hatred for so long. From then on, he learned to forgive. And for the first time in many years, he found peace in his heart. In daily life, we also easily fall into delusion. We think that we must have a lot of money to be happy. We must be praised by others to feel joy. We must win every argument to feel valuable. But then, when we achieve what we desire, we fear losing it. And that fear drags us into suffering. In reality, this delusion stems from our forgetting the present moment. We either live in memories of the past or worry about the future, rarely truly living in this very moment. The Buddha taught that the past is gone. The future has not yet come. Only the present is real. When we return to live fully in the present, we will see that happiness is not far away, but right here, and enjoying a hot cup of tea, listening to birds sing, or simply taking a deep breath and realizing we are still alive. I also remember one morning when I stepped out, and it suddenly poured rain. Some hurried along, grumbling because their clothes got wet. Others smiled, extending their hands to welcome the rain. The same rain, but each person a different state of mind. Life is the same. Circumstances are inherently indifferent. Only our minds decide suffering or joy. If we view everything through the eyes of delusion, we will see injustice everywhere. But if we see through impermanence, understanding that all things come and go, then even adversity becomes a lesson for us to grow. There are relationships in life that break our hearts due to betrayal or unmet expectations. But ask yourself, if we endlessly cling to resentment, what do we gain besides sleepless nights? But if we choose forgiveness, only then will our hearts truly have room for peace. Forgiveness is not agreeing with the mistake, but freeing oneself. When we can let go of hatred, we are no longer bound by the past. Our minds become open and compassionate, and only then do we truly have the capacity to love. Human life is short. Joys and sorrows, gatherings and partings are just like clouds drifting across the sky. Only by seeing through human existence do we realize that all disputes are small. All gains and losses will pass. If we continue to live in hatred, we only waste this precious life. But if we learn to let go, learn to see everything like a flowing river, then we will find ourselves liberated. Just as when gazing at a still lake, we find our minds also quiet, without turmoil. So, practice looking at life with the eyes of awakening. When encountering suffering, smile, knowing that suffering is also an opportunity to grow. When encountering happiness, cherish every moment, knowing that it does not last forever. When hurt, forgive, so your heart can be light. And when swept into the delusions of fame and gain, remind yourself to return to the present, to your breath, to the simplest yet most genuine things. If one day you feel your heart heavy with resentment, try sitting still, listening to your breath, watching the clouds drift by, and ask yourself if you need to carry that hatred for the rest of your life. The answer is always no. We are born a miracle. We live as a blessing. So why allow our souls to be imprisoned by meaningless resentment? Let impermanence remind us that everything will pass. Suffering will pass. Happiness will pass. Only inner peace remains. And to attain that peace, we need only one simple thing: to live fully in the present, without hatred, without delusion, without attachment. Then you will find your heart like the clear and bright sky after a rain. And then, as a day closes, you sit in the quiet night. You will smile and realize that happiness has never departed. It merely waits for us to see through human existence and return to ourselves. Perhaps every morning when we wake up, we all wish for a new day to begin with enthusiasm and peace. Yet, there are habits that subtly pull us away from the path of peace and joy, without many realizing it. A sleep that extends until noon, a session of drinking and revelry, or moments of succumbing to gambling, sexual misconduct, or simply nurturing bad thoughts in our minds. All of these can become invisible chains, binding humans to a cycle of suffering and spiritual discipline. Sometimes we think these are just small matters, fleeting pleasures. But in reality, these very things create karmic forces that deplete blessings and cause us to lose the clarity of our souls. The ancients often taught that the plan for the day lies in the early morning, meaning a good day begins at dawn. Yet, not a few people disregard the morning, letting their bodies sink into warm blankets. Sleeping late not only makes the body sluggish, but also causes the mind to become dull. The more one sleeps, the easier it is to become lazy, losing agility and clarity. The Buddha taught that each morning is a new opportunity, a small rebirth, for when we open our eyes after a long night's sleep. That is when we are granted another day to live, to practice, to sow blessings. If we waste the morning, we are also missing a part of our lives. Like a farmer who doesn't sow seeds in spring cannot expect an abundant harvest in autumn. Laziness and idleness are among the doors that lead people to poverty and suffering. I remember once hearing a story about a young man who was initially intelligent and bright, but due to his habit of staying up late to revel and sleeping in until late morning, his work became increasingly neglected. Gradually, good opportunities abandoned him. His family advised him, but he didn't listen, thinking that a little more sleep wouldn't hurt. Then, one day, his health deteriorated. His mind became disoriented, and his career slipped from his grasp. Only then did he truly grasp that seemingly small habits had unexpectedly destructive power. Reflecting, one's life sometimes doesn't collapse from major events, but is gradually eroded by the very bad habits we cultivate day after day. If laziness is the silent wind that withers vitality, then drinking, gambling, and sexual misconduct are fires that burn away the accumulated merits that people have painstakingly gathered. Alcohol, according to the Buddha's teachings, is a doorway to countless errors. When drunk, people lose mindfulness, lose sobriety, easily utter harsh words, easily stir up gossip, and even commit acts harmful to themselves and others. Gambling, in turn, ignites a greedy mind, leading to hatred, disputes, and the breakdown of both familial love and domestic happiness. As for sexual misconduct, once indulged, it not only harms the body, but also shatters fidelity, sowing countless sufferings and torments into life. These three things are like three poisons seeping into life, then stripping away faith, compassion, and even existing blessings. In the scriptures, the Buddha taught that the wise steer clear of alcohol, for drinking intoxicates the mind, leading to transgression and the creation of negative karma. One immersed in drinking is like a bird that cuts off its own wings, forever unable to fly high. One who falls into gambling is no different from someone digging their own grave, for insatiable greed will carry them further and further away. And one who nurtures evil thoughts is like sowing a poisonous seed into the field of the mind. Sooner or later, it will bear bitter fruit. Another time, I had the opportunity to hear a story about a once very well-off family. The husband ran a prosperous business, the family was affluent, and the couple lived in harmony. However, he succumbed to drinking and gambling. Initially, it was just a few social drinks, a few casual card games for entertainment, but gradually it became a habit. Alcohol made him speak coarsely and become angry with his wife and children. Gambling squandered his savings, pushing the family into debt. When he lost all his property, his wife took their children and left, and only then did he realize, with dismay, that he had lost everything because of his bad habits. That story is not uncommon in life today. It shows us that when the mind gives in and lets bad habits take over, it's like locking the door to peace and joy with our own hands. Furthermore, there is a seemingly invisible but extremely dangerous habit, nurturing evil thoughts in one's heart. An evil mind can manifest through hatred, resentment, envy, or even just pleasure at seeing others fail. Often, we may not commit evil acts, but if unwholesome thoughts arise in our minds, we have already sown a seed of suffering. The mind is like a field. Whatever seed is sown will sprout. If we sow seeds of compassion and understanding, the field of our mind will flourish. But if we let seeds of hatred and selfishness take root, soon the entire field will become barren. The Buddha once taught, "When the mind is pure, the land is pure." When our minds are clear, the world around us also becomes peaceful. Conversely, if the mind is full of hatred, wherever we go, whatever we see, we will find vexation and suffering. In truth, abandoning these bad habits is not an overnight matter. The important thing is that we need awakening to recognize them, and then gradually change. Instead of sleeping late, cultivate the habit of waking early, breathing in the fresh air, dedicating a few minutes to meditation, or chanting the Buddha's name. Instead of succumbing to drinking and gambling, find joy in simplicity. A hot cup of tea, a good book, a sincere conversation with loved ones. Instead of nurturing an evil mind, practice letting go by contemplating impermanence. Understand that all things arise from karmic conditions. There is nothing for us to hate or envy. When we have self-compassion, we will feel light-hearted and peaceful. One who knows to avoid bad habits and keeps a clear mind will naturally have lasting blessings. For merit is not something distant, but the fruits of the good seeds we sow every day. Every time we wake early, every time we decline a drink, every time we restrain a bad thought, all are ways we are cultivating blessings for the present and the future. Like clear water, if preserved, it will flow eternally, nourishing all beings. But if we let go and allow rubbish and bad habits to fall in, that water will soon become murky. Finally, let me remind you that this life is inherently impermanent. Wealth, fame, and status can all be lost in an instant. The only thing that remains is the merit we have cultivated. If we live mindfully, keep our minds clear, and steer clear of bad habits, we will naturally be joyful and free, walking steadfastly on the path of life. Maintaining a kind heart is like a lamp illuminating the darkness, guiding us through all adversities to live a serene life. Have you ever, on a quiet afternoon, seen an elderly person sitting by the roadside selling vegetables? Their wrinkled face, trembling hands, holding out a few bunches of dewy green vegetables? Passers-by bustled by, some stopped to buy, others hurried past without a glance. In that moment, your heart might have stirred a little, perhaps with compassion, perhaps a quiet urge to buy a few bunches of vegetables to help, without any calculation. That is the seed of giving, the moment when your heart thinks not only of yourself, but also opens up to others. And from those very moments, merit is quietly sown. In life, we often think that merit is something distant, something that can only be accumulated in temples, or by chanting many scriptures, or performing grand deeds to be called creating blessings. But the Buddha's teachings are very simple. He once said that giving does not impoverish, it only enriches one's blessings. Merit does not come from ostentation, but from the good seeds in the heart, sown through each person's actions, words, and thoughts. Among the many ways to cultivate merit, there are 3 acts of giving that anyone in life can perform: giving material things, giving knowledge, and giving courage. These 3 things seem simple, yet they have the power to lead our minds to peace and freedom. When speaking of giving material things, many immediately think of money. But in reality, material things are not just money, but anything we can share. It could be a warm bowl of rice for a weary traveler, a warm coat sent to a cold highland region, or simply a glass of water offered to someone thirsty. I remember once walking down the street and seeing a raggedly dressed child whose trembling hand held a stack of lottery tickets, inviting customers. Passers-by hurried along, few stopping. I bought a few lottery tickets, and then, with a convenient gesture, gave the child some more money. The child's eyes lit up, and a naive, radiant smile appeared on their face. It was then that I truly grasped that an act of material giving, no matter how small, can warm a person's heart and warm our own as well. Giving material things is not to show off one's wealth, but to sow good karmic connections, gradually untying the bonds of selfishness that bind our hearts. The Buddha once taught that when a person knows how to let go of greed, knows how to use their wealth to help others, blessings will be like overflowing water. The more you give, the fuller it becomes. For wealth is inherently impermanent, here today, gone tomorrow. But merit follows us through all lifetimes. One who knows how to share material things will be less fearful of life's changes. Because within them, there is always a belief that if good seeds are sown, good fruits will come. And in that serenity, their minds are calmer, no longer agitated by loss. And besides material things, there is something even more precious to give: knowledge. Because material things can nourish the body for a day, but knowledge nourishes for a lifetime. Have you ever sat beside an elder, listening to them recount the lessons they've learned, and then thought to yourself, if only I had heard this sooner, I might have avoided many mistakes? That is the power of knowledge being transmitted. Giving knowledge is not to display one's understanding, but to open a clear path for others, helping them stray less. A dedicated teacher who imparts to students not just academic knowledge, but also teaches them how to be good people, is giving knowledge. A friend who advises us to let go of resentment, sharing ways to keep our minds at peace or when facing suffering, is also giving knowledge. Even a small story about karma, or a simple Buddhist teaching like, when goodness is in the heart, flowers bloom fragrantly, is enough to awaken someone to reflect on their life and choose to live more virtuously. Giving knowledge is sowing seeds of light into people's minds, helping them find light in dark days. The Buddha once emphasized that wisdom is a torch that illuminates the path. A person may be materially penniless, but if they have wisdom, they can still find their way. Giving knowledge is cultivating wisdom for others and for oneself. Because when we share, we understand more deeply and absorb more fully what we have learned. One who knows how to give knowledge will no longer be selfish in their thoughts. They judge less, compete less, and instead open their hearts to empathy, because they understand that everyone is on a journey of learning. And in that transmission, both find peace and add another layer of merit to their spiritual journey. The third thing, seemingly the hardest to give, but the most precious, is courage. Courage is not always heroic, like in grand stories. Sometimes it's just a hand clasp, a word of encouragement, a presence by someone's side when they are overwhelmed. Someone once said that in their most desperate moments, they didn't need money, didn't need theoretical words, but just someone courageous enough to sit beside them and say, "Don't be afraid. I am here with you." Giving courage is lighting a flame of hope for others, helping them to rise after a fall. The Buddha taught that compassion is not just pity, but also a supportive strength, a hand extended when others are in need. A timely word of encouragement can save a life. A trusting gaze can make a disheartened heart cease its despair. When we give courage, we are also transmitting to them faith in karma, the belief that there is still hope in this life. And in that moment, our own minds also become expansive, no longer confined to the small ego. Looking back at these 3 acts of giving, they seem simple, yet encompass the entire body, mind, and spirit of a person. Material things nourish the body. Knowledge nourishes the intellect. Courage nourishes the soul. When we know how to share all three, it means we are gradually perfecting the path of accumulating merit. The precious thing is that giving does not make us poorer, but enriches our hearts. Like a candle that lights other candles, its light is not diminished, but shines more widely. Life inherently holds many adversities, but when we know how to live in the spirit of giving, our hearts naturally resent less, fear less, and instead feel a sense of peace because we know we have lived meaningfully. And from that, we move through adversity with a calm mind, no longer panicked, no longer suffering. Accumulated merit is not for boasting, but to cultivate inner peace so that each time we close our eyes and pass on, we know we have lived a complete journey. You can start today with a small action, a smile to a stranger, sincere advice, or a word of encouragement when someone is disheartened. These things may seem trivial, but in the realm of karma, they are precious seeds that blossom into merit for all future lives. Remember that giving does not cause us loss. It is, in fact, opening the door to happiness for ourselves and for others. Have you ever, on a rainy afternoon, listened to the pitter-patter of rain on the porch and suddenly recalled the image of your parents from years past? The father quietly carried the burdens of life on his shoulders, rarely complaining, yet his calloused hands told of all his hardships. The mother was hard-working, staying up late and waking early, her tired eyes still brightening when she saw her children at peace. Whenever those memories are recalled, something in our hearts feels both warm and poignant. We suddenly realize that family is the cradle that nurtures our lives, the starting point for all karmic connections, and also where life's first lessons are most deeply imprinted. In Buddhist teachings, family is one of the most important karmic connections in a person's life. Humans are born under the influence of karma, and family is the result of that karmic connection. When fathers and mothers uphold virtue, their children will inherit blessings. Conversely, if parents are unrestrained and create much unwholesome karma, their children can easily bear the consequences. Thus, the role of parents is not just to give birth, but also to be role models, a foundation for children to walk on the journey of life. I once knew a small family in the neighborhood. The father was a carpenter, his hands always covered in sawdust, his clothes worn and faded. The mother sold goods at the market, toiling from dawn till dusk. They were not wealthy. Their home was just a small tin-roofed attic, but both always lived kindly, without deceit or greed, always knowing how to share with their neighbors. The strange thing was that their 3 children, though not given much wealth by their parents, grew up to be filial, diligent in their studies, and benevolent. The eldest child became a doctor, known for his dedication. The second child became a teacher, teaching students with all her heart. And the youngest followed his father's carpentry trade, but was so reliable that everyone trusted him. Looking at that family, people often praised that virtuous parents led to blessed children. Indeed, as the Buddha taught, sow good seeds, and good fruits will follow. The virtue of parents is a blessing for their children and grandchildren. In the scriptures, the Buddha once reminded that parents who observe the 5 precepts live uprightly, and know how to do good deeds not only accumulate merit for themselves, but also leave blessings for their children and grandchildren in future generations. For karma is not confined to an individual, but also extends through lineage within the family. When parents live virtuously, children learn from their example. That is a silent yet powerful form of education. Education within the family does not begin with lofty sermons, but with very small actions. A child will learn kindness when they see their parents sharing with the poor. They will learn self-respect when they see their parents not bowing to dishonesty, not coveting others' possessions. They will learn tolerance when they see their parents forgiving, not holding on to each other's mistakes. And they will learn wisdom when they see their parents thinking thoroughly, not being impetuous, not resenting life. These values, if taught only through words, are hard to deeply absorb. But when witnessed through parents' actions, they will be etched into a child's heart for a lifetime. I once heard a story about a poor father in the countryside. He didn't have much money, but whenever he went to the market and saw an elderly person or a child begging, he would take some rice from his home and give it to them. His son, who was young at the time, once wondered, "Our family is already poor, so why does Father still share with others?" The father just smiled. "Our family is poor, but we still get 3 meals. Some people only wish for 1 full meal, my child." Many years later, that child became a person of status. When he recalled his father,